Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
That is exactly right. Welcome to the show, everybody. We are Johnny Millionless because he is down with the CV-19. He's under the weather, but he's doing just fine. But we're giving him the day off so he can recuperate. I ask a lot of that young man when he's on the show, and it's got to be mentally and physically taxing. So I got to say, and this should stand as a warning to anybody who's working with me, that if you're under the weather, you're not going to be able to deal with the tornado of energy that I will be throwing around, especially when we're dealing with the importance of the stories that we are discussing today. On the live stream, I will be throwing the chat up on the screen so people can see it at infotainmentwars.com and at the Facebook page and on Rumble, where I think there are like 9 Iranian bots watching the show, which I think is, look, a boy can dream, can he? That's the key. And then, of course, on Instagram will be up in just a minute. So much to cover, and I made notes for myself because I've found it increasingly difficult to keep track of the flim-flam, the sales pitch, the annoying level of aggravating, extraordinarily aggravating level of sort of Barnum and Bailey level salesmanship. Like the general to Elvis or the colonel to Elvis, this is an organization that is hell-bent on presenting the idea that they are saving the taxpayers a lot of money and that those savings are going to stack. And if you just give them enough time and enough access to your bank accounts and your Social Security numbers and your Medicaid and your Medicare and your Social Security payments and your and the DOD budget, and the books and all the gold in Fort Knox, eventually they will save you some money that will chart on a level that will allow Donald Trump to sign the House bill that extends his tax cuts, which would add $4 trillion to the debt and deficit. Now, not in that order, by the way. There's plenty of this, and Philip Bittner will be joining us in the second hour, as per usual, from Kyiv. And obviously there's a lot of news there as Donald Trump has been trying what would be his Art of the Deal Chapter 4, always be BSing plan to scare Zelensky and I guess the Europeans into giving into Russia's insane demands. So here's the difficulty. We will definitely discuss it in the second hour with Philip, but the deciding point on this is that the intransigence is coming from the Russian side. They invaded in the first place. They are run by a dictator and an oligarchical class. It is basically a mob clubhouse with a gas station, and that gas station has run out of snacks. And so as they dwindle as a society and demographically, they have very little to offer the world except destruction. And the rest of the world knows this. The vast majority of the American people know this. And so Trump's plan is somehow to help Russia get on a power footing so that everybody thinks that America's going to back Russia in this circumstance more than we're going to back Ukraine. And ultimately, that will cause Ukraine and Europe to fear that alliance that will not exist and give in to a bigger slate of wants from Russia. And at the end of the day, that will create the space where a deal can be made. Because what Ukraine wants is normal, get out of our country. What Russia wants is insane. We want a chunk of your country and the ability to continue salami slicing our way across your country forever. Ask Georgia, ask Chechnya, and good luck Kazakhstan. And so Russia's demands are so insane that no one would take them seriously at a peace talk, and therefore Trump has to make them give them an imbalanced control point to negotiate from. which they don't have economically right now. They certainly don't have militarily. They're getting their butt handed to them by a country, whatever, a 19th their size in terms of landmass, and nowhere near the allegation. I think we can argue, though, at this point that Ukraine has the second best military in the world. But we'll get to that with Phil later on. But that is part and parcel to what Trump seems to be absorbing of the Musk methodology, is this move fast, break things ideology. That has been something we have heard about for quite some time in the world of technology. And the reason why move fast, break things didn't really come on in as a management and developmental R&D structure in corporate America for a long time, why it wasn't invented a long time ago, was because you were working the physical sciences with reality and not making Candy Crush. So the moving fast and breaking things would have a real world implication. And so it's not surprising that inventors that work in the real world with physics and with chemicals, especially, and explosives and electricity and that kind of stuff, maybe pace themselves and check their math. They measure twice, cut once, because there are real ramifications to your actions. And you don't want to destroy your very own process by, getting out over your skis and blowing up your lab would be the idea. And we will be up on Instagram in just 1 second. I'm getting that settled now. And so it's built a lot of fanboys, this idea of move fast, break things, because in a very distinct world, the gamer world, the coder world, the tech world, where a lot of times, even when you're dealing with serious software, you're dealing with it in a fishbowl. You're testing it on limited devices. You're running demos of it within the company. And so, are you really moving fast and breaking things, or are you just moving on computer scale, which time-wise is immaterial? Because again, what is the purpose of time scale except a reflection on mortality and limited material resources? There is no time in computational isness. Don't get me too philosophical right out of the gate, but there's no need for it. One of the reasons why robots don't learn, they just absorb knowledge, is because learning is a time-based effort and programming is not. You can upload something, that's not learning. It's simply the instructions inserted into a pathway. Hence, robots don't learn, robots don't dance, none of that stuff. So, and because that's how it's done, you really can't waste anybody's time. You can maybe waste their money in Silicon Valley, and I suppose in the sales pitch of creating software or a device in the tech world, it's no skin off anybody's nose because it's all optional. And when it comes to stuff that isn't optional, like the software that runs the banking industry or Social Security and stuff, the reason why all that stuff is very slow to update is because they're constantly having to make security patches on stuff when they did it in the past, and have asked Microsoft, have to update it almost on an hourly basis sometimes, depending on the attacks that come in, and it's everybody's livelihood. It's identity theft. It's your direct deposit of your paycheck. It's a payment from an annuity that you use to pay your gas bill. It is the gas company getting payments from their users to deliver actual, natural gas to heat the house. It's an actual physical thing. Nowhere in Elon Musk's entire financial repertoire are there any musts. Now, in the move towards improving our impact on climate, there have been some, what I would say, like sidecar musts. There are, if we care about the environment, people should be driving electric cars. Therefore, Tesla benefited from the ecological beliefs of largely Democrats in converting how they would transport themselves around their cities, homes, or states from a fossil fuel to an electric vehicle, from an ICE vehicle, an internal combustion engine, to an electric vehicle. And that's a plus, and it does help. It is a pattern of behavior that improves our circumstance with climate, but it wouldn't be classified in the emergency zone. It is an option. And increasingly, there are other electric cars out there. Rivian being one. Cadillac just released an entire fleet of new ones that have a 460-mile range, outpacing the best Tesla by almost 100 miles right out of the gate. Everybody knows the electric Hummer. I want that one because it sounds funny, and it crab walks. The wheels will turn sideways, and it's just looks really cool. Anyways, but being that it's electric, it has none of the impact of that the previous Hummer did. In those, it is crucial that people recognize that. Same thing with SpaceX. Is it good? Is it in addition to, is it nice that we're invigorating our space travel and we're pushing towards that? Great. Yes. Is it the kind of stuff that helps FEMA? No, it isn't. Is Starlink special to helping FEMA? No. DirecTV has had a satellite system that you can drop into places forever, and so do all the cell phone companies. All of them have these drop-in towers and support structures that they can put in. So everything he does is optional. And that's why he treats everything that he's encountering in the government as optional. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. I'd like to break down my theory that it's a heist. Posing as help, posing as maids and helpers, they're stealing from your cash drawer. We'll be back right after this. And we're live on Instagram. Okay, cool. Hi, everybody. Hi, chat room. And let me get this. Let's see. And we'll be back in just 1 second.
Back in 20.
You got it. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Now, let me be abundantly clear so that we can simplify the conversation about this Doge business. Let's start off with Doge isn't Doge. It's not a department. It's a lobbying group set up by Elon Musk as a buddy organization to tell Trump what to do. And there will be conflicts. I've often talked about this. These trains leaving two stations on the same track headed towards each other, and it is only a matter of time before they run into each other, in that Doge is on a collision course with what a good portion of Project 2025 wants. And it might be longer for those trains to collide, but it is happening. Now, Doge is, again, not a department. It's a committee. And every time a president comes in or a new administration comes in, oftentimes after them in 8 years, especially, the new administration will make a big deal of forming commissions to look into the possibility that at some point we might be able to have some savings or whatever that will lead to better growth in the economy. And I'm going to get these 9 guys to sit around, and we're either going to pay them or not pay them, depending on what the rules are. For what level of committee it is, and they're going to advise me on how we should go after they look into it and do a study group. Now, most of the time, the people in the Trump administration or those around him are just Googling old QAnon sites. They're not actually doing a study, but It's not that different from previous administrations at all. Previous administrations come in and they have committees to try and see if their plan will actually work with the new information that they have once they get in there and they take a look at it. And so Doge is part of a long line of bloviated sales pitches to cut a lot out of the federal government and make it bare bones and shrink it so that Vladimir Putin can drown it in a bathtub or whatever old Republican talking point. So first of all, not a department. It's COGE. It's a Committee on Government Efficiency, and the government efficiency part should be in quotes, because simply canceling contracts or killing programs is not efficiency. Efficiency would be making sure that every cut you make is beneficial and you don't cut stuff that actually helps in the process. That's inefficient. So again, the whole name is garbage. I suppose of gets a pass in the Doge thing. Also, Doge is not just his coin with the dog on it that he talks about to try and sell his meme coin. It's EGOD backwards, which is an old eBay reference for techno-atheists to joke about how social media would become the opium of the masses, the new one. So we will be your EGOD. That's it backwards. And never mind right-wing Christians always going on about backwards written words being satanic. They've forgotten this in this particular thing. So just letting you know. So Doge is EGOD backwards. Also not a department and has nothing to do with government efficiency. Also, the people working in it, all the Doge people, are unelected bureaucrats who have not declared an oath to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. They are gaining access to stuff, and they are unknown to the general public. There was even an attack on media outlets who just simply looked into who the members of the team were who are having access to your social security number and all of your accounts and your medical history and everything, every piece of information the government has. These guys have, in theory, now have access to all of it unfettered, and you're not allowed to know their names. Now, if you want to talk about a deep state, you want to describe the deep state to me, it wouldn't be bureaucrats I can look up on a website. It wouldn't be people who are appointed to a position who can also be unappointed, people who are hired to do stuff that can also be fired, that are listed in the staff on name the agency, the Department of Education, right? All the staff, everybody there that they accuse of being the deep state, these unelected bureaucrats are all listed there. You can see exactly who they are. But somehow the Doge guys are supposed to be a mystery. You do not, America, you do not have the right to know their names, what they do while they're in there, what their background is, what they care about, and certainly you don't have the right to expect that they take an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, before they get access to your private information. That doesn't sound like transparency to me. That sounds like a heist. That sounds like a bunch of guys showing up at a bank dressed as security guards, and then as soon as they get in, they pull down presidents' masks and shotguns and take the place. So let's just dismiss the farce that they can use unelected bureaucrat as a pejorative for anybody else. Let's just throw that out the window. And anybody who brings it up should be laughed out of the room. These guys are unelected bureaucrats. By definition, they are bureaucrats. They are walking around with a clipboard deciding what spending is prioritized, which isn't, willy-nilly, and will line item wipe stuff out on their own judgment without consulting your representatives. Again, this is a violation of the rule of taxation without representation. These folks don't represent you. They represent their own interests in between the Congress and the administrative state. So it's a heist. They're unelected bureaucrats. It is the very definition of a deep state, because you're not even allowed to know who they are. And if someone tries to write a story about who these folks are, they get attacked for doxing the people who have access to your private information. So that's key. Also, the idea around what they're doing. We've heard from the Republican Party let me get into this. Okay. First of all, Doge is faking their numbers. Let's just start there. At Doge.gov or their spending tracker that they have, you can go look, and they are repeatedly inflating the number overall of the savings that they had to the absolute outside of absurd level. So the most recent list that I've seen is 55 billion. Let's see. There's the spending tracker. The current one is $70 billion of money. Let's see. Search spending categories. I don't even know that that's their saving. That's just the spending tracker that they're going through. In terms of this. Okay. While, by the way, selling the Dogecoin on the same website. So, anyways. Department of Government Efficiency.gov has its own little website, and on there they are inflating their numbers artificially. They are 10xing it by my numbers. When I went through it this week on my show, and we went through line by line on a bunch of these like random needle drops on stuff they were claiming that they had actually saved money on, contracts they'd canceled. Buildings they had shuttered to save the American taxpayer money, we find out that not only in a lot of cases did they save nothing because the contract had ended last year, that they take credit in multiple lines in this thing for things that ended naturally at the swearing in of the next president. That happens all the time. These are contracts that expire on that kind of an arc altogether. There are other ones that they would have ended at the end of this year. They sent notice of cancellation, which means, by the way, that the contract will simply end this year on its regular schedule. We're giving you notice that we're not going to pick up this contract starting at the next year or start negotiating it. So just count on it going away, which happens again all the time in government, all the time, and the money's still going out for this year, and it will end when it's going to end, but they're counting the savings from it as if that money is A, not going out, and B, that they will often count that contract was set to end this year, that is still going to be paid out, that they are going to honor until the end of it, would have been theoretically picked up for another 5 years, so they want to count the savings from that on their total. And they do this line after line after line after line. And even with that, even if you took their absolute outsized number, this ginormous, bloviated BS number that they have made up out of whole cloth, that is 10 times higher than the material changes they are making in the budget, and even those changes in the budget would be the normal turnover changes in budget from any administration. Any administration sees a shift in spending or a drop in spending in those areas as they get rid of the executive order or the programs from the last administration into theirs. Even with that, $7 trillion federal government expenditure per year, $7 trillion a year in federal budget, $2 trillion deficit, which Trump is set to raise. We'll talk about that because the Republican budget raises the money that's being spent this year, doesn't zero it out with the savings, doesn't pay for it with the Doge savings. I got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. Everywhere you look, hashtag it's a heist. It's a heist. These guys are working for free and doing this stuff, and it's not amounting to a hill of beans. And the reason is simply because they plan on getting paid later. Hashtag it's a heist. Doge is a heist. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Live streaming every day of the week except Sunday. Got to take one day off at infotainmentwars.com and on my Facebook page and on Rumble and on Instagram. We'll see you in a minute. There's so much to this, chat room. There is so much to this that I finally, I've had to start making notes simply so I can check off all the ways it's a heist. Because it would be one thing, like, as you can see, I could talk for like 15 minutes on just one phony aspect of Doge. If you're being generous, it's a farce. It is simply a PR scheme to make Trump look capable. And if you're just giving everybody the benefit, if they're not stealing your information, if they're not getting access, or they're not trying to move themselves in a position where they get to pick up the contract for the Treasury, so they can take PayPal software and make it run every payment that goes there and shave off a nickel of every dime, that goes through, or every dollar that goes through for themselves, and make trillions over a decade, right? That's, if you give them the benefit of the doubt that's all they're doing, it's one thing. It's a heist. It's a freaking heist. Okay, thank you. And so, and cool, we're coming back.
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Okay, I have a tendency when I'm talking about this to get into the deep reads because there's so many deep reads, and I want to keep it clean for people. So, Doge, it's a heist. Hashtag, it's a heist. Nobody has a problem with cutting government expenditures. Nobody has a problem with any administration coming in and changing the priorities. We might not like it if we're politically on the opposite side from it, but that's just part and parcel to elections have consequences. No one is complaining about that. And it's the slapdash nature of them doing it, which damages people and is totally inefficient. When you fire a bunch of workers and then you have to hire them back, it's going to cost you money. That's inefficient. So the illusion of efficiency can go right out the window. Doge is a heist. The reason all these guys work for free, why they work under the table, why they don't want their faces shown, that they're basically black blocking it like Antifa, in terms of the tech work they're doing, is because it's a heist. They're coming in under the cover of charity. We just want to do what's great for America. And somehow that took them about 3 weeks to, we need to break into Fort Knox. It's a heist. It is whether it becomes a financial material heist or a long-term contractual heist, in terms of Musk positioning himself so he can have multi-billion-dollar government contracts that are just automatically awarded to him as a reward, like a donor, or if they're selling your information, or they're planning on, one giant act of identity theft after this is all over. We don't know, and the Republicans need to be called out on the fact that they don't want you to know. Nobody has a problem with cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. Everybody has a problem with unelected bureaucrats getting to look at all your private information without ever having to swear an oath, and we don't get to know who they are. Regular government employees are listed on websites. These guys are not. That's the problem. It's a heist. Until proven otherwise, we are standing across the street as a bunch of guys jump out of a van in overalls and dead president masks and run in the door. I'm not going to assume they're there to make a deposit. Stop asking us to be stupid. We're not going to do it. So, Doge is not only is it a heist in what it's in it, and I believe its method and its purpose is a heist. On top of that, it's simply crap. Doge also, hashtag, is crap. It's crap. They're lying to make themselves look like they're doing good work. They are failing in multiple areas where they are, firing or being responsible for the firing of people who are necessary to our national security. And then they go, oops, my bad, and fix it. Again, not efficient at all. Waste of money, waste of time, dangerous. An attack on our national security that would qualify. I mean, if you had somebody who showed up and kidnapped people who were protecting our nuclear arsenal, took them out of the building for 48 hours, it would be a crime. It would simply be a crime. So, anyways, let me go back. Okay, first of all, hashtag it's a heist. Second, it's crap. They can't do math. They triple and quintuple count things on the regular. They 10x their savings, and even those 10x savings won't make a dent in it. So you could argue that the damage they're doing is more expensive than the savings that they are showing. Easy. Okay, so one, they are counting expired 2024 contracts as savings. Let me say that again. They are counting expired 2024 contracts as savings. Why? Why would your team get credit for something that happened before you even showed up? Why at all? And shouldn't you be embarrassed to list that? And there are dozens of them on their site. So let's start there. They are listing expired 2024 and previous contracts. They also count some reported savings from earlier investigations that happened during the Obama administration. That's an ongoing process. Hey, we discovered this waste, fraud, and abuse in the system by a law that was set up under Obama. That's an ongoing factor. They're claiming the savings from that investigative branch that was put in power during the Obama administration. They're counting the savings that team makes by finding this fraud as their own. Just think about that for a second. So two, okay. Counting previous contracts and previous investigations that are saving money as their own. All right. Then the other one, they are assuming zero or negative savings, negative ROI on all their work. So they are assuming that if they cut something, it zeroes it out. That there's a $37,000 contract. We cut that contract. We've saved you $37,000. Okay, that's what they're assuming. That's how it's written up on this website again and again and again. And they put zero. Look at that. Look, cost to the taxpayer, zero. Well, if you look into the contracts they post at all, that's not the case. First of all, most contracts have an early termination fee. If you end the contract early, you still owe me for half the next year or whatever the next cycle is. You don't get to just stiff me going forward, right? That's fairly standard. So they don't count maybe half the contract has to be paid out this year to just end it. So it goes from $37,000 to maybe there's a penalty on it. And you have to pay at least 10. So let's say it's not zero that it's costing the taxpayer. It's costing 10, and you're not getting any of the work anymore. Whatever that contract was doing, if what it was doing was beneficial to a point where it was profitable to the taxpayer in its worth, that work is gone, but the money still goes out the door. So we're paying $10,000 for nobody to work. Sounds like corporate welfare to me at best, and sleight of hand accounting along with it. So they count everything as zero, or they don't factor in the negative return on investment aspects of it, where if they downsize, you've got a group of people in a building and you can move them into another federal building. They do this a lot on there, where we've got 2 federal buildings. One is a third full. The other one has a rotating space in it. We can take the third full of these people and we can move them into the bigger building, and everybody will be a little cramped, but comparatively it'll save us a lot of money and it'll save the taxpayer money and all this. Okay, well, the process of moving everybody from that building to this building is not zero. Let's just start there. You don't get to go, okay, we're moving these people from this building to this building, so the cost is zero. You got to rewire the entire thing. You have to find the space. You have to coordinate it. You have to, if it's in a different zone, people have to move sometimes, and you have to give them incentives if you want to keep them in the job. It ain't zero. Just count it. It would be a heck of a lot less embarrassing if Doge would just go, it was $900,000. We saved, $80,000 of that over time. But they don't. They pretend to save all $900,000, even though everybody in this building is just going to move to another building, and we need all those people working all the time for the job that they do. And you're going to have to hook up their computer systems, and their computers might be on a different system because they're different departments. You're just taking, federal government's the federal government. So if there's half the building is the Pentagon and half the building is the Department of Transportation, what's the big deal? Well, there's a myriad of things. Department of Transportation, for example, licenses police cars across the United States. As part of what they do. They coordinate the fleet of both federal vehicles for law enforcement, and the DOD is not allowed to police citizens. So they have to be separated. And I don't think anybody wants the DOD necessarily to automatically have access to every American's driver's license without having to ask. It's like, oh yeah, look at that. We're all on the same server. It's moronic. And it's normal stuff and here's the thing. These computer guys, they know this. I know this, they know this. There's no way they don't. And if they don't, the idea that they're a bunch of Doge geniuses is shocking. I'm surprised they can find the address of the building using Google Maps as it yells at them while they're in an Uber. It's absurd. So, okay. They count as zero, and everything that they cancel, they don't factor in the negative costs of getting rid of a contract or any of the moves, any of the things. And they also do not factor in that while we might spend $9 million on something, the return on what taxpayers get from that $9 million might be $60 million in worth. It doesn't take a lot to figure out is your time more valuable than your money? Depends on what you're doing. And so fast food, for a lot of people, is an exchange of money for time. Could you fix the food that's at a fast food restaurant for about the same amount of money or less, especially if you meal prepped over a week? Of course you could. But your time might be more valuable than your money in those circumstances. And therefore, today, because of how the day is going, you drive through a drive-through, you get some food, you throw it down your gullet, and you go out the door. Now, is the worth of that money, or is it simply the exchange for that food? Is that how you chart it? Is the burger a one-to-one worth the material, dead presidents, and deceased notables on coinage or your debit that you give for it? No, it's also the time you save and the fact that your blood sugar doesn't cadaver in the middle of a business meeting because you've eaten a meal. There's an extrapolated experiential reference to what you save by not spending the time to prep your stuff. If you haven't done that, then this will save you that circumstance. And it could lead to a bunch of other positives that might be negatives if you don't eat at all. If you go, if I didn't prep the food today, I'm just going to not eat. And then you get watery headed and then car accident and whatever. All right. So the point is, as an analogy, I think that's fairly sound for where people understand that sometimes the outlay of your money is worth more than your time. Steve Gore in our chat says, Hal, there's hundreds of millions wasted. Okay, first of all, waste is in the eye of the beholder. These are a lot of programs that they simply disagree with. That's not waste. That's just different priorities. The U.S. government supports gun ranges all over the country through secondary funding and through state funding and grants and all this other stuff that support gun ranges. And many of them are indoor, poorly ventilated, that would cause lead poisoning to anybody who works there. And the U.S. government, I think, wastes money on those endeavors. If they can't stand on their own and people can't find a barn to shoot in, why should the taxpayer, especially if somebody doesn't like guns, be made to pay for that? I disagree with that policy. Is it waste? Yeah, to me. But it isn't a waste to Republicans. That's a priority thing. Okay. So, again, waste in the eye of the beholder. Secondly, a lot of times you'll say it's a waste of money to patch your roof. It's probably not going to rain until a rainstorm comes and your attic is flooded and your entire house is now worthless. You have black mold in your house because you didn't fix the leak, because you thought it's a waste of money. It's not that big a leak. It's not that important. I'm not prioritizing that. I got bigger fish to fry. Everybody's complaining about what my driveway looks like, so I'm going to spend that money on plants on the side of the driveway as opposed to fixing the roof, right? That's the complaint about, the prioritization. Again, not waste, just priorities. And still, hundreds of millions of dollars doesn't even chart in a $7 trillion budget. You need to find $1 trillion. They need to find a single account with 3 digits in the area of billions of dollars, $100 billion of wasted money, genuine waste, before they can justify the existence of this organization. And they're not going to. And if they could, they wouldn't be puffing their numbers up artificially. We got to take a break. I've got the next one. It drives me a bit crazy too. Hang in there. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. The hundreds of millions of dollars that are wasted in federal government stuff every year, businesses would have you could argue, have a waste and inefficiency problem. All of them do, rotating all the time. And specifically, and I say, okay, so Steve thinks Ukraine is a lot of waste. Thank you. Thinks Ukraine is a lot of wasted money when we're okay. So again, your response to I'm just going to assume, Steve, that your response to the Bucha rapes was they had it coming.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So let's be abundantly clear. In a $7 trillion federal budget that has a $2 trillion deficit coming out of something like COVID, where Donald Trump himself is responsible for adding nearly a third of that. If you count the interest stacked on it, on his debt, it's soundly a third of the national debt accrued during his presidency, including his tax cut, which he wants to make permanent. And again, in this process, yesterday I showed a video on my live stream of Rand Paul standing on the floor complaining that why don't we take the savings that Doge is making, and instead of adding, the Republican Senate has put a budget forward that raises the debt ceiling. Well, here's the thing. Adds $340 billion to the budget. Takes Biden's budget, the amount of money allocated by the Biden administration, and adds $340 billion on top of it. Wrap your head around that for a second. Just everything you hear about, oh my God, we're throwing money out the door and they don't even know what they're doing, and the Biden administration was throwing money every direction that they could, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Understand that. They are taking the Biden budget numbers and adding $340 billion with a B on top of that for this year's budget. That's the Senate bill, which has and that's, by the way, the Senate is doing two halves of a bill. Right? They're splitting it. They want to split the baby. They want to do one up front that has the border funding and the DOD funding, and then punt the rest of the spending to a second bill later on. They want to get through what they can get through to try to help Trump during his first 100 days by hiding the debt that they know they're going to have to accrue in his tax extension later in the year, after his first 100 days. Because if they pass the budget that the House wants to pass, that raises the debt ceiling $4 trillion. Why that number? Well, his tax cut, to make it permanent, would make a $4.5 trillion hole in the budget. And they're hoping that no one will notice that extra $500 billion if you extrapolate it out over a decade. That's why. So again, think about the budget priorities of the Republicans and what they've told you about what their budget priorities are. And understand that the House bill raises the debt ceiling $4 trillion to basically give Trump $1 trillion a year in excess spending so that they don't have to talk about. They don't have to bump up against the debt ceiling $1 trillion every year of his presidency. That's why. And then I want you to look at the Doge crowd and the $70 billion, which is a lie that they allege to have found. And even if taken at their absolute word, put $70 billion up against the $340 billion the Republicans have added to half of their Senate budget, or the $4 trillion in debt expansion that the House wants to add. And then tell me again how Doge is making any kind of a material impact on the debt in the future at all. They aren't. So there's got to be something else going on. Hashtag it's a heist. Now, and again, they take it. I've said this a bunch of times. They're counting contracts that were, that expired last year, investigations that have been going on since the Obama administration that find waste, fraud, and abuse, that file a report, and then they take that report and they claim they found it. They take stuff Rand Paul has been talking about in his little newsletter every year that happened 3 years ago and count it as stuff they've found. Garbage. It's a farce. Across the board. Okay, so and the only upside I can see to the entire Doge thing is that it's effectively calling the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans lazy and liars, because we have oversight committees. That's what they're supposed to do, and they do it all the time, but nobody watches it because it's on C-SPAN and it's not some dork in shades and a dark MAGA hat with Nazi lettering on it, waving around a chainsaw that doesn't even run at a conservative political action committee gathering for faux Christians. That's why. You don't watch C-SPAN, you watch that nonsense. You watch the ketamine kid stammering about what he thinks his guys are doing when he's not even there. So, Doge, it's a farce, it's a heist. And even if you were the most generous you could possibly be, it will have zero impact. Zero impact on the deficit and the debt, especially since the House Republicans are adding $4 trillion to the debt over the next 4 years minimum. That's if they don't raise it again. We're going to assume that Trump will get tired of spending taxpayer money, the king of debt, the guy who wanted to eliminate the debt ceiling before he even got in office. This, by the way, is the mitigatory step. Think about that for a second. This is the House trying to meet Trump halfway. He wants to get rid of it entirely. They'll meet him at $4 trillion for 4 years. We'll give you $1 trillion of play money for the next 4 years. So you can effectively flood the engine. And let me tell you, anybody who thinks this is going to work, that Doge is going to, after the end of the 100 days, get a cake and a candle for the work that they're doing, are fooling themselves. Anybody who thinks that suddenly the economy is going to turn around in Trump's first 100 days or the first 6 months is nuts. And as a matter of fact, we just found out today that where is it? Yeah. Officially, U.S. economic growth has stalled. Investors concerned over U.S. economic statistics show continually high inflation and a slowing economy, reported CNBC. Stocks hit new lows Friday as the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped over 700 points. S&P plunged by 1.7%. NASDAQ Composite fell 2%. Walmart shares also toppled by 2.5%. Gee, I wonder if the China tariffs have anything to do with that. CNBC reported that it was the worst day for the U.S. economy since Trump took office in January, and stockholders grow wary of increasing tariffs and seemingly arbitrary policy changes. The economy data has pushed some investors into buying bonds, making yields fall. According to a consumer survey conducted by University of Michigan, people are also increasingly worried about inflation. Survey found consumer sentiment fell 10%, with buyers showing concern as home sales decreased more than expected in January. A 5-year inflation forecast also put inflation percentages at 3.5%, the highest since 1995. Investors are reportedly choosing safer options for their money, such as consumer staples, healthcare, utilities, as the economy slows. That's not going to turn around anytime soon. 2 reasons. One, these are the economic effects of the world's biggest shutdown being, just a little over, 15 years after or a little under 15 years from the Great Crash. The impact of COVID and the shortening of supply chains and the reshoring of factories is a long-term investment strategy with no quick financial fix. There is no way to lower inflation and do that at the same time. If you want to bring manufacturing back to the United States, you are guaranteeing the cost of those things, unless they are completely automated, is going to go up. And if they're completely automated, you're not putting anybody to work. And that's okay. You're allowed. You're allowed to automate your factories and that kind of stuff. But you can't pretend they're going to hire the same number of people that worked in car plants in the 50s. It's absurd. It's cartoonish. It's childish. It's Maria Bartiromo Fox business level dumb. And maggots, you guys see this coming. There's no way you can't. $70 billion versus $7 trillion and a $2 trillion deficit. If they find another $70 billion, still not a drop in the bucket. Should they fix those cuts? Absolutely. But that's what the House Republicans were supposed to be doing this whole time while they were lying to you. They don't care about the debt. We got to take a break. When we come back, Philip Bittner will be joining us from Kyiv. Let me say this on my way out the door. The national debt is to Republicans what they think climate change is to us. A crisis that's really an emergency, and if we don't do everything right now, it's going to destroy life as we know it. When they kind of don't believe it. We'll be back. Will do. Okay. In here. Thank you. Brian just got done with work. He might be able to come on with you and Philip. Oh, good. Okay. I will let me set up a situation where I got Phil and I got this one. So yeah, if he can join me here, I'll fix this. I'll move Johnny's name around and see if I can. I know what I'll do. Well, no, that's okay. I can do this temp. It's a temp thing, so it's okay. I'm going to. I've got my Boston Brian name tag thing up there. Let's look in here. Yeah. Okay. I can be prepped for that if he decides to come in there. Where's my you silly thing. Lower thirds. Excellent. And the Boston and the Brian. Put this over here. There you go. Excellent. And we should be good. I'll add it to my Instagram thing as well. And if he can make it, that's awesome. If not, I've got, I'll have Phil all prepped. Excellent. Oh, and I will need let's see. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Guest, let's see. Where would it be? Cancel. So this guy is what? Oh, it's a source doc. That's what it'll be. Yeah, there we go. Okay, I got it, yeah. Bringing it in there real quick. I will have a window available to him. Where's my guest 2? There it is. Nope. That's guest 1. This would be guest. There it is. Dink. Okay, excellent. Guest 2. Excellent. Visible preview. Properties. Yeah. Audio control. Okay. Add. Cool. Cool. Okay. Got it. Close. So if he ends up making it, thank you. Give him 15 minutes. Okay, great. He can come on if he wants at the quarter hour or at the break at the half hour. I'll bring him in. And I don't see Phil yet, but hopefully we will. Waiting on him. Yeah. Okay. So there we go. And then the 2 guests with news. I'll switch this over. Okay. Yeah.
We're back in 15.
Thank you. Okay. Turn this off. So I can use this when he comes in. We'll be good. Okay.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you if the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Pus face little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
All right, so I'm still waiting for Philip Bittner to join us from Kyiv. Right now, he should be on in any moment, and there's always an issue digitally when you're connecting with someone who's in a war zone. And again, makes it very different, I would argue, than priority, like administration priority payments when people are being attacked by a foreign country because of nothing that they did. The prioritization of protecting and saving those people should be higher than your kind of normal situation. In the same way that we, deal with funding in a hurricane zone versus someplace that just has let their school system go to pot over a while or needs federal funding for a new water treatment plant, right? There's and this goes to, by the way, the conversation that I dropped right before I came in, and I'm glad a little bit that I have a moment to talk about this. So, one of the things we've learned about climate change and people's response to climate change was that Greta Thunberg did more damage to the cause than she helped. And this is materially, Phil's coming in here in a second. I'll bring him in just 1 second. I see him starting to pop up in there. All good. And this is measurable. Greta Thunberg, in her speeches was so full of gloom and doom that she turned people off. They got into what I call the smoke 'em if you got 'em category. In the area where, there's nothing I can do. It was so severe, everybody gave up. Doge is dangerously close to that being a reality. That the budget is so big, and we're destroying our children's future. And if we don't do something immediately, we don't cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security to the bone right now, everybody's doomed, and nobody buys into it, either out of comfort or whether or not they can even process the threat or the reality. Understood? So this is something the Republicans are having to deal with right now. Again, not blaming her, but this was the extraordinary nature of the thing. Now, I'm going to bring in Philip Bittner. He's joining us from Kyiv right now. Hey, Phil, welcome to the show. How are you doing, sir?
I'm all right. Send my regards to Johnny. I hear he's under the weather.
Yes, he is. I like to think of it as the weather is on top of him right now. Sure. Obviously a lot to talk about. And it's there seems to be, as far as I can tell, a total lack of strategy on the Trump side. And it seems to be throw as much incendiary stuff around, and whoever's weak and backs down gets eaten, essentially. And so the assumption would be that he rolls in. Obviously, Russia is on the downside of this circumstance right now. They started it. The world knows they started it. It was a war of aggression. They need not have participated in based on this illusion of NATO expansion that they allegedly fear, even though they signed off on it in the 1997 NATO Russia founding agreement. And they were like, it was okay then, it's just not okay now. And they've been, using the same plan as they try to take, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Chechnya, and Georgia, and of course Ukraine. They're on the back foot. Nobody likes them. Some people feel like they have to deal with them. They have manipulated, the media and some groups to try and raise their influence in the world. But still, even like you got Republicans going to the floor, putting up pictures of the mass graves at Bucha and going and saying enough, tap dancing around Putin. Right. This is key. And it's a huge change. But I think what Trump seems to be doing, and even in his dismissal of Vance as being his natural, offspring, the next up in the Pez dispenser of Republican leadership, which he dismissed outright on this interview with Brett Baer. He just said no. If he was going to support Vance in the next election cycle or what have you, take what you will from that. But it seems like Trump is simply just trying to throw up as much stuff as he can. And again, if Zelensky or somebody backs down or he sees a moment of weakness in any of this, then it justifies his might makes right affinity with Vladimir Putin. That see, told you, all you got to do is just bully people, and the weak people deserve what they get.
Well, I mean, there are no Ukraine or Russia experts in the State Department left. They all got broomed out because they were pro-Ukraine, anti-Putin, and if nothing else, Trump has shown his cards. He's taken his mask off, and it's undeniable now that he's pro-Putin. He is 100% behind the Kremlin. We have a man in the Oval Office who has openly said that his worldview is more akin with let's divvy up the world into regional powers and might makes right. And if you happen to be unfortunate to be born under the umbrella of the Russian region, then your sovereignty means nothing, and you will become a vassal state. This is not what America has been about ever in its history. I mean, I would argue. I mean, even going so far as like the Spanish-American War, where we kind of took the Philippines, or the Mexican-American War, where we annexed. Even back then, it was a different time. So I kind of pushed that. But in modern American history, we don't like empire, especially when we engage in it. We're not supposed to like empire when it's the Russians, especially the Russians, in particular the Russians, because their empire is particularly brutal. And so now we're in this strange new world where we got the commander-in-chief, a man who is supposed to be advocating the tenets and the beliefs of the U.S. Constitution, openly siding with the Russians. So there's no counterbalance in the State Department. Samantha Power's gone. Fiona Hill is gone. Maria Yovanovitch is gone. All broomed out because they believed in the America that we used to be, and representing that on the global stage, and that's unacceptable to Trump. So he got all of them taken out of the State Department. This is a real low point, in my opinion, we will see if the bullying works. And I mentioned all the guys who are kind of Russia experts and Ukraine experts, because in particular, Ukraine does not like being bullied. Okay. I mean, it really, especially post Maidan. But you can go further back. I mean, I posted earlier today on my socials. I got a painting in the entry hall to the studio on the Edge. And it's a reproduction of a Russian/Ukrainian, because it was empire in the 19th century. A guy by the name of Ilya Repin, and he painted this wonderful painting called "The Response to the Ottoman Sultan from the Zaporizhian Cossacks." And the Zaporizhian Cossacks are Zaporizhia here in Ukraine. They're Ukrainian Cossacks. And it's the story behind the painting. The reason I highlighted it today was because the response to the Sultan, who is attacking the Zaporizhians, he's saying, surrender and don't bother me, and just, I won't hurt you, just give up. And the Zaporizhian response is filled with profanity, and and there's a wonderful adaptation that Peter Capaldi did with Matt Berry. I recommend after the show, folks should look it up. It's hysterically funny, but it's meant to be insulting to this kind of like, I will crush you. And the Zaporizhian Cossacks are like, you can't F your this with your weak that, and all the rest of it. And that spirit inside Ukrainians never fully went away. And it certainly has resurged, not just after Maidan, but certainly during the full-scale invasion, which of course now we have to mark the 3rd anniversary of on Monday. Their response tends to be, two fingers up. But sadly, problem is this: they definitely need U.S. assistance. And when the original proposal that was brought over here by Secretary of the Treasury,
Besson.
come on, Besson. That was completely unacceptable to them. So he was sent. He was sent packing. But it appears as though there has been a modification in it. It's coming back. A scuttlebutt in town is Zelensky's going to sign it. Zelensky's going to sign it because first and foremost, we need the Ukraine needs support from the United States of America, and any obstruction to that, they need to remove. And Zelensky's come under some criticism by folks here in the country saying, don't poke the bear, don't provoke him. To which my response is, Trump's going to hate Zelensky and Ukraine no matter what.
Exactly.
So you might as well stand up to him. He's a bully.
Yeah.
But this is a democracy, so everybody gets to voice their concerns about what the president is doing. What I think was the thing that may have broken Zelensky's resistance is, and this is very upsetting to say, but apparently Musk said, I'm going to shut off Starlink. And yes,
right.
Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff about that, but let me we can talk about that. But the point of shutting off Starlink, which is of course the satellite system that he put up, where you can get high speed internet anywhere in the world. There's a footprint and all the rest of it, and they need that for their drones. Drones are the most effective weapon that they have on the battlefield against Russia. So if there's some contention, a lot of Ukrainians are saying actually we have fail safes and we can and we're paying for it, and we have another system that we can.
Let me take a break because there is a backup to that. No, it's never good. But again, relying on Elon Musk for your security, safety, or the I don't know, the health and well-being of your citizenry is a dumb idea. Period for everyone. So we'll be back right after this. Boston Brian's waiting in the wings. He's going to join us as part of this discussion as well. So hang in there. We'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Do one thing. Hold on 1 second. Go back to here, and then put this in here, and paste this in, and go okay, and then take this guy and move you over to here. Copy this guy, and this.
I hope I don't make this too complicated, Hal.
You are not. You are just fine.
I couldn't hear. I couldn't hear Phil.
Yo, you couldn't hear him.
It sounded like at times like it was just low.
I can't hear
but
Brian.
Then at other times like it wasn't like anything.
Okay, you might have to reconnect. You should be able to hear him, but give me a second before we do that. That's funny. Close. There we go. And then I want to see if there we go. Now, hey, what's going on? Chicago, you can hear everybody, right?
Yep.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me do this. Sometimes it's this little thing. And then I'm going to turn off this, turn off this, turn off this. And can you guys check for me? Phil? Okay, now I don't hear them at all. That's fun. Let me refresh your microphones. And see if that does it. Check for me. Nope. So fun. Compressors. Okay, audio gain is off. Turn this off. Turn this off. This off. This off. Chicago. I might need a minute so I can figure out the audio issue with these guys. Yeah. Can you guys reconnect for me, both of you? Just pop back in. Yeah. Just hang up and pop back in. It might solve it. Thank you. It's always something. Okay. All right. And then check for me. Let's see. Can you guys...
Mic check. 1, 2.
Yeah, you hear me? All good?
Phil? I can hear you, sir.
Fine. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great.
All good here, too.
Okay, can you guys hear each other? Did you hear Phil?
I can't hear
Negative.
Brian. Oh, good.
Like I said, if it's too much, buddy, I'll bow out. Not a big deal. I don't want to make it too complicated. I just figured I'd hop in for a couple.
No, it's okay. I will just have to. I will moderate between the two of you. That'll be the easiest way.
If something says standby
coming back in 10
on my screen, does that make any sense to you?
Maybe. Yeah.
I can
Big yellow
kind
thing
of
up
hear
top
them.
says standby.
It might be coming off of even your headphones or
I've
something.
never
I don't
seen
know.
that
I can
before,
hear.
but could be nothing.
Very
You're
faint.
locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
All right. You know what? I'm gonna make this work because I want to make this work. That's what's happening. Hold on. Let me see if I get a window in here where everybody's around. Look at this. On my right is our dear friend Boston Bryant joining us in his Slava Ukraine shirt, and on my left is Philip Bittner joining us from Kyiv. One of the things I wanted to discuss, and I'm gonna organize this as best I can. I'm gonna do my best Nicole Wallace in this situation. Do these proper throw-tos like a real grown-up news person. There's an article. We were talking just about how Musk has been threatening the loss of Starlink all along this process, and I think the Ukrainians are wise to have backups. But this is an article amid growing concerns of potential Starlink shutdown suggested by some Western media outlets. Ukrainian military officials emphasize their readiness to maintain stable communications on the battlefield. Military radio technology expert Serhiy Flash Beskritov highlighted that as early as the start of Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. It's been an ongoing problem with them. Ukraine's defense forces were already establishing alternate communication channels. These alternatives span from radio relay systems to fiber optic lines and LTE modems, complementing the existence reliance on the commercial Starlink service. All regiment, brigade, and battalion commanders are developing alternative communication channels. Everyone knows Starlink could be disconnected, and hence they don't rely solely on it. And I think Boston Brian, let me go to you real quick. Is this going to be the strategy for everyone in Trump time? That we all just need to get our house in order so you don't have to rely on anything from these untrustworthy Putin sycophants?
I mean, yes to your question, yes. But I do think the Ukrainians have been smart enough to have been doing this well before Trump being in office was even a consideration. I think Musk kind of played his cards a little too early in this one by threatening, taking them away, which gave the Ukrainians the red flag goes up, your ears perk up and you kind of say, okay, it's a possibility that at any time this could go away. So if we were smart, would be wise to start working on a backup. And I believe the Ukrainians have showed throughout this entire process that they have been a step ahead in innovation as far as drone technology, as far as just battlefront technology is considered and how it's used. So much so that other militaries have been studying their strategies, their tactics, and the way they've been doing things this entire time, including the United States Army and military. So yes, I think you're 100% right. And I think it's something that people were wise to recognize early on in this process, especially as it pertains to Ukraine.
Yeah, I think ultimately the lesson we should all learn from Trump's former business associates, and the same thing of people that Elon Musk dismisses without even knowing what they do for a living, is that both Musk and Trump, if they have a key trait right now in human history, is that they are worthless as allies. They serve, I mean, no one can rely on these guys at all. MAGA can't rely on Trump to be honest with them. Musk can't be relied on to tell them the truth with his little Doge experiment thing. It's a farce. And so I think that when you're on a battlefield, you're even more aware of that. Now, Phil, I'd like to ask you in terms of that, and I don't know what kind of internet, we connect with you all the time. What kind of system is in use where you are? Is it the available internet in the city?
Yeah, it's a hard line. It's properly connected to. I've got a cable, coaxial cable, and it gives me decent speeds. At the office, I have very fast internet because, of course, I'm doing stuff with the show, and I want to make sure that when I do my teleconferencing, when I do remote interviews that it's fast enough. So
Sure.
In the cities, and in particular here in Kiev or maybe in places farther west, you get really good, solid internet. Things get a little bit tough out in the east, especially like in towns that are constantly under attack, like Kharkiv or Kherson.
Sure.
And then alternatively, if you're close to a tower, you can get up to 4G. 5G is not really around. There's not a good, at least I haven't encountered one. But that's not going to work for the front lines. But again, reiterating, I think ever since the failed naval attack where Starlink was switched off on them, they've realized that it's not something they want to rely on. Having said that, and I let's not put it on rose-colored glasses. If suddenly Starlink were to be switched off, it would be a process of transitioning to whatever else that they would try and do. And that would be a period where their defenses would be badly hampered. They would not be able to send out the drone swarms that they use to blunt any offensive action that the Russians do. So in the immediate aftermath of Musk turning them off, there's the potential Russia could make some significant gains.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're prepping for the idea that it's going to be a guaranteed thing, or that it'll at least be spotty. I think the chances that, I think the smart move is to cease to rely on any aspect of it as quickly as possible and transition away from that. Now, in the meantime, though, while I've been told that Russia is kicking names and taking ass in every area, one of the stories that I found particularly hilarious this week, if I'm allowed at least to show this to this, and I want to ask Boston Brian about this, is this: Putin's boats are in such bad shape that he is floating a plan to use nuclear submarines for LNG transportation, either as tugboats for giant ships. They literally, okay, so for those that don't know, Russia has a big ship filled with corn that blew a hole in its side and nobody knows why. It just rusted a hole in its side. That's taking on water in the Sea of Azov right now. And again, there is no, to any sensible person, I'm like, Trump is always 10 years behind every reality that we expect. But like, if you're making, Boston Brian, if you're making decisions like this as the leader of a country with the world's second biggest military, allegedly, the most powerful military, is this a good sign or a bad sign? I just don't think it's a good look.
You know, I hope this is okay to say, but I don't think anybody's more happy than the Polish military, because everybody likes to joke around with, like, you know, the Polish military jokes as it pertains to, like, ships and stuff. But I think Russia is currently, you know, giving them a run for their money as it pertains to, like, their ships, you know, the state of their equipment, the state of their nuclear arsenal, the state of their military. I mean, it's becoming a joke. It really is becoming a joke. And without the help of, you know, Vladimir Trump and his cronies, you know, Russia would continue to sink, you know, sorry for lack of a better phrase, in this war. You know, they would continue to lose. They would. I
think they're going to. I mean, I honestly think we're in a situation where there is no upside to this. I keep looking at how you right this ship, because Trump has this idea that they're going to have a peace process and everybody's going to be cool with it, and they're going to bring everybody to the table, and it's going to be this big, beautiful thing where everybody agrees, which is just ridiculous. And in that agreement, we're going to undo these sanctions, and everybody's going to go back to trusting Russia as a fair place to do business going forward. When in reality, I think he just wants it kicked back on as a crypto farm for some of his bros. And that's enough of an investment for him to care about it. But the rest of the country, they're not going to solve their demographic problem anytime soon. They're not going to solve their economic problem. And they're not going to start producing goods and services that the world wants outside of fossil fuels anytime. And if they bring their oil and gas back online, China's not buying it, and the U.S. isn't buying it, and Europe isn't buying it. So they're going to be selling to Africa and the Middle East as, you know, as a secondary fuel source. I just don't see, like, this like resurgent. There's not going to be like this 9% growth in the Russian economy all of a sudden because of this. Phil,
I think this story is another it's
Yeah,
another
well,
version of Putin
and not
missiles.
also,
Sorry.
Hold on
let's
one
not
second,
forget.
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Let's go to Phil first, and then Brian. Phil, finish your thought when he comes back. Go ahead, Phil.
Well, no, I was just going to say that there's also the consideration that because as a result of Putin's war on Ukraine and the ramifications, the fallout from that, they've lost their warm water ports, so their shipping lanes are going to be restricted and could be shut off at a moment's notice. In the Baltic, their Baltic Sea Fleet, which is based in kind of the St. Petersburg down to Kaliningrad area, that is now, because of the ascension of Finland and Sweden into NATO, that's now essentially a NATO lake. That's locked in. They have a very narrow shipping lane that they can transport military or economic vessels out. If Baltics or Scandinavians want to shut it down, it can be done like that. Same thing goes for the Black Sea. Now they still have Archangels, but that gets frozen in for several months of the year,
right.
And then alternatively they have Vladivostok in the Pacific, which is not sustainable. It's too far away.
We got to take a break. When we come back, I want Boss Brian to finish his thought about where does Russia go from here except down? It's the same issue China has. They have a trap of their own making that existed before all this, and it's just getting worse. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sports Radio program, Mega Worldwide. So, sorry guys, I'm trying to
I'm not hearing Chicago.
I apologize. I'm very sorry. Somehow every time I come on here, I manage to
Brian.
We're not on, right? Screw things up even worse, and I feel like an asshole.
You are not. You're just fine. And he can as long as you guys wait for me to toss to you by name, it's not a problem.
Right.
And
that was my fault. I got too anxious.
No. It's and again, these conversations are valuable, and I wish you guys could hear across each other. It's just a weird crisscross of things.
What do you think it's something on my end?
Nope. It's just a flaw in this. In the way I bring guests into the show sometimes, and it works most of the time, and then sometimes it just doesn't. And I think it's because we're being attacked by the deep state. That's my personal theory.
I think two things. I think this is another just propaganda move. It's another one of Vladimir Putin shooting off a missile that could be nuclear capable, that could be it could have a nuclear warhead on it, but doesn't. Just to kind of show people that he could if he wanted to, type thing. You know what I mean? Even though we don't know if he actually has a warhead that would actually function on that particular missile or rocket or whatever. You know what I mean? I think it's another one of those. They have but the problem is, and as you were saying to Russia, like going down, and tell me if we're coming back because I can't hear Chicago.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Stand by, we're coming back.
If
we're coming back now.
Go ahead.
Give me 1 second, and I'll let you know.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I want to remind everybody, also on Sundays, you get a dose of both of these gentlemen. Philip Bittner has a show called On the Edge, which has some great guests and gives a very personal, and I think the White House, everybody there should start watching it on the regular. The human, there he is. Okay, he's back. It gives a very human side of what's going on in Ukraine, and has since the beginning of the war, and we're lucky to have him with us on the regular. And Boston Brian live streams on Sundays as well. It's Blunt Politics. Check it out on his YouTube and his Twitch channel. Now, what we were, the theory is, the generous theory is that Trump, because he has no idea how any of this stuff works, the way he finds out where the weak point in a room is, or a circumstance, or a deal, is that he comes in and he throws extraordinarily, outrageous concepts. to Russia, we're going to make a deal where they're going to give us their raw materials and we're going to defend them. So we're going to have American companies in there farming this stuff out of the ground, and they're going to be our buddies, and watch out, Russia. And then with Russia, it's like Zelensky won't stand for an election, and you guys are just trying to protect your Russian guys, and they deserve this country anyways, and they look alike. So why are we even arguing, kids? That he just throws those kind of ridiculous, anchorless, absurd, incendiary elements to it. And do we have are you sharing a screen?
I
Phil?
am.
Oh, excellent. Okay,
Me?
cool. No, Phil was sharing a screen. So I was going to, and my issue in all this has been is that I think this is Trump's ignorance and how he turns his weakness into a strength is that he bullies anybody, and whoever backs down first, he takes advantage of them. And that's the natural order of things. So, Brian, you were saying before that you think this is a lot of showboating and puffery along the lines of, Putin launching a missile that's supposed to be nuclear just to scare everybody, right?
Well, as far as the nuclear, as far as the submarine story goes, you know what I mean? I think it's another. It could be another version of Russian propaganda, trying to make it seem like they're far more capable than they actually are. They do it all the time. It's nothing new. Anytime a story comes out from Russia, you'd be wise to believe the exact opposite right off the bat, and then do some more research into thinking, into what the actual article says. But it's unfortunate because we're being laughed at right now. Russia is laughing right in our faces. They're laughing right in Trump's face. If anybody's been following Russian state propaganda, as I do, in the last week or 2 weeks since this whole kind of beef, we'll call it, started between Trump and Zelensky, Russian state propaganda, Russian state media has been eating it up. They have been loving every second of it. They have been, they're getting gift after gift after gift. And the only way that I see Russia surviving is if Trump continues to favor them the way he's doing right now. Because if he gives them enough land, and he steamrolls Ukraine in some sort of way and tries to give them enough land, lets Russia regain some sort of, respect on the world stage. We know there are dirty players out there in the world that will continue to buy stuff from Russia, whether it's crude oil, whether, gas, whatever it may be. So, the only way I see them being able to stay afloat is by Donald Trump. And I'm a little curious why Trump's doing it at this point. It's either two things. It's either his ridiculous love affair for Vladimir Putin and dictators, or it's money. And, if we're to believe that he actually made so much money from this meme coin that he had, then why is he still favoring Vladimir Putin? It must be some sort of love affair, or he doesn't believe that he actually has that amount of money in the meme coin. He doesn't believe he either has access to it,
smoke.
Or he's going to get it, or it's going to last like that, or he's not going to get caught in some
or he can't
criminal
even process
aspect of it.
Or he doesn't have any idea how to get that money out of it without collapsing it. It's much like the Truth Social, and his Trump Media Technology Group. The minute he starts to sell any of his stock, which is the thing that has the most worth, it's worth more. Even it will start to cadaver the minute he sells and gets out. It went down when he went back to being on Twitter. And it's not coming up. They lost $400 million last year, and again, that's with like puffery support from people who I think are just keeping it afloat as sort of a bribe. I think the meme coin is the exact same thing too. I think the problem is that it was supposed to free him from his debt, and now anybody can walk in and go, I own $20 million worth of Trump meme coin, and I'll sell it this afternoon if he won't meet with me. That's scary. On the scale that that they're talking about, or $1 billion worth of it at this point, because they bought in at 20 and they own it at that high point, so they can evaporate this fake wealth from him. So, Phil, when we're looking at like Boris Johnson just did an op-ed in the Guardian. And I think, or the Daily Mail or whatever, where he goes, of course, it's bonkers to say Ukraine started the war, but here's what I think Donald Trump's trying to achieve. Now, he's way more, I think, generous to Trump than we would be. But he basically breaks down what we've been saying. Like, nobody in their right mind would blame America for Pearl Harbor, or his analogy was the girl in Jaws for taking a late night swim, and not the shark, right?
And he put a similar tweet out, right?
That's right. And so, Phil, it seems like the Trump saying Zelensky isn't popular has backfired. Do you think Trump distancing himself from Europe and from Ukraine will backfire as well and make them step up even more than they seem to be?
Well, yes and no. Well, no, let me clarify. Absolutely, there's a possibility that Europe is going to now step up because they don't rely on America as a partner. The backfiring aspect of it is that makes the world a lot more dangerous, not safer. I think if they get a ceasefire or whatever, kind of a stoppage on the war, just to get a stoppage on the war so that Trump can, wave it around and go, look at what I've achieved, and hopefully, I'll get a Nobel Peace Prize sort of thing for his ego. The problem with that is, though, that doesn't stop the conflict with Russia. That only delays a far worse conflict. That's
Sorry, Phil. I lost you on audio there. It's getting clippy. Let me see if we can remedy that on our end. Give me 1 second. So in the meantime, Brian, your thoughts on the Boris Johnson tweet and his statement, and the fact that he links to it to a story in February of 2023. From the Daily Mail, it says Ukraine will become a NATO member in the long term. Head of the alliance says, which relates to a meeting that they had in 2026. This is after the war started, because they applied for EU membership in February of 2022 after it was invaded. But long term, they will eventually be in NATO because Russia invaded. But in 2016, they were like, it was never going to happen. It wasn't even an. Ukraine applied to integrate with the alliance with the NATO membership action plan in 2008, but plans were shelved following the 2010 election of Viktor Yanukovych, who chose to keep the country non-aligned. He fled Ukraine in 2014 during the Euromaidan, but despite calls from protesters to be more aligned with the West, the replacement government maintained it had no plans to join NATO. This is back in 2014. So the idea that Russia justifies this the way Trump is talking about it, or that he's a dictator or any of that stuff, is just nonsense.
Well, it's just, it is all nonsense. Like the denazification, that's, the talking point that seemed to disappear really quick. As far as Boris Johnson is concerned, I mean, that guy can find a hole in some cave and crawl into it. As far as I'm concerned, I don't care what he says. Right. I think, you can pull up a lot of politicians that have said pro-Ukrainian things in the past, but we're in a new time now, and what are you doing now is what I care about. Who are you defending now? Who are you supporting now? Who are you speaking up against now is what I care about, because we can go back and find clips from Marco Rubio telling us how important it is to support Ukraine, and now look what's going on. So, excuse me, Boris, but I frankly, I don't care what you have to say about this. If you're going to come out on the side of Ukraine, I will gladly accept your alliance, as long as you play the part. But, if you're going to do this just to appease Donald Trump and get closer to Donald Trump in some way, shape, or form, even though it looks like he's going against him. Right, right. I know it looks like he's going against him. I do.
I feel like he's actually, this is more about his alignment with what is a growing power structure in Europe. If he's trying to suck up to anybody, and Phil, can you check for me again to see if your audio's working again? No, if you could reload, Phil, rejoin, because I'm sorry about this.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
I think
Hal, you're absolutely right, because I think this goes back to what you were saying earlier, as far as people realizing they need to be more self-reliant and reliant on themselves as more than say their allies or the United States in particular. So you're 100% right. I misspoke.
Yeah, and the suck up from that some people are doing, and you know me, I'm a lot more patient with this stuff than you are, and that other people are, is because I understand that Trump is a doughy headed old fart with an easily manipulated ego, and since his response to people coming out against him is extraordinary and vast and will affect your constituents. Phil's back, I think. We're here. Okay, hopefully.
Test.
There you are. Yeah, I can hear you. That's excellent. Okay.
Okay.
And now I don't. I was saying while you were out, and say to Brian that I have a lot more patience with people that are trying to be deferential to him or suck up to his ego, as long as they're voting against him when the time comes. And that's been, most of the time what we're seeing is, and very few people we're seeing are standing up to him. Although it's really been starting lately. I think the tide turned in many ways, and one of the reasons why the Maine governor's response to Trump went so viral is because, how dare you speak back to him? And then she did it again, and she did it again, and she did it again. And Trump's response to that only goes so far. And then he starts to question whether he's in as strong a position as he thinks he is. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this with some of the questions that we have in the chat room for Phil and for Boston Brian. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. So the questions that I see in the chat are, Vincent wants to ask Phil if he thinks Trump's hint to bomb Kyiv had played out, meaning that they could do it if they wanted to and they didn't, or something. I mean, he's just blathering, I think.
Oh, no, not that Trump would bomb Kiev, but the Russians could bomb Kiev if they wanted to, and they've been holding back.
Right.
I haven't seen anything about Trump threatening to bomb Kiev.
No. That's what he's
Trump,
referring to.
Much.
Yeah, and then another one was why was Trump and the leader of Ukraine being why are they? I guess Steve. Why Trump and the leader of Ukraine?
We're back in 20.
The Azov battalion stuff is we've asked and answered that so many dozens of times. What's the best way to help Ukraine right now? I gotta say is flood Republican senators and House members with calls about it, because they're not going to.
I am happy, you are happy. Let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yay! So we have a bunch of questions, and I want to kind of like lightning round this. So I might peg back and forth between the two of you and try to push this. But one of the things was about. Vincent wanted to know what Phil thinks about Trump's hint, I guess, of Putin's ability, I guess, to bomb Kyiv and how that played out. I don't see, it seemed like blather.
Blather and an overestimation of what his capabilities are, and also what Ukraine's air defense capabilities are. He could send high altitude bombers to carpet bomb Kiev. He could try that. But Ukraine has very good air defenses. That would be a very risky thing to do. Carpet bombing Kiev, here's another example of how Trump has no understanding of what's actually happening here. Russia bombing Kiev would be like a Muslim nation bombing the Kaaba in Saudi, Mecca and Medina, or a Jewish faction bombing the Temple Mount, or a Catholic country bombing the Vatican. Kiev is the birthplace of the identity of Rus. To destroy it would be really a bad move for him. But Trump has no concept of this.
No, I mean he sent his supporters to attack the Capitol, and supposedly they love America. So I guess I don't even know what his concept of loyalty is at this point, if it exists at all. I would have a similar question. There are a couple people want to know, Phil, what alternates you have for internet in the country yourself, just in case. Because everybody worries about you while you're there, and with good, reason.
Well, I've got my hardwired stuff. I've got 4G, and I've got a satellite phone, and then I have a Starlink as well.
Okay.
So I'm good. I'm fine.
Yeah. As many people have an issue, and this is a good one to bring up with our dear friend Boston Bryan, again, who has Blunt Politics on Sunday. Please check it out and subscribe to his YouTube channel and his Twitch channel, I know a lot of people who aren't fans of, say, Jeff Bezos, for example, because, super rich guy, owns the Washington Post, wouldn't let them post a picture of him. But he's coming up with a system that will replace Starlink that goes online later this year, the Kuiper. And the Kuiper system, allegedly, according to him, and we'll see, because I tend to believe him more than I believe the ketamine cowboy, Elon Musk. And we'll see if that's reasonable. That that anybody who owns it, who buys it, who isn't sanctioned specifically by the U.S. government, say the Iranians or something like that, can use it. They can buy it. They can buy it like anybody else. And if Ukraine had it, he wouldn't act to shut it down. They would, they're an ally, end of story. Even if they're engaged in something or we have a disagreement, as long as they're not sanctioned specifically by the U.S. government, they're allowed to buy it and use it. And they won't put their thumb on the scale in any of the European countries or the rest of the globe, for that matter, opening it up to the broadest audience, where it seems like Starlink has become, over time, this sort of internet weapon of choice for Wagner. That it really the only place it breaks out around the consumer base in the U.S. prepper market, or people in Europe who buy it because they're in out in a rural area, is so that the Wagner Group can do its communications in Africa, South America, and Middle East and Asia. Are we going to have a war of the billionaires, I guess? And it's rooting for Godzilla over Mechagodzilla, but we could still get stepped on in the process?
And I'm not sure what his motives are. He might see a weak spot as far as, with Elon Musk and Starlink and his, talk of pulling it. And, he might see an opening where he can convince, like you said, the United States government, the Ukrainians, that he will be a much more consistent and loyal partner. He'll make a product that will pretty much do the same thing, but you don't have to worry about, drug-fueled rants and Sig Heils and anything like that. I'm not going to, we'll make it so that, the Wagner Group, as you said, can't use it in Russia. It's only sold to you guys. If they get their hands on it, as far as the black market is concerned afterwards, there's only so much you can do. But again, if it helps the Ukrainians, I'm all for it. If it gives them a more stable platform, the ability to stop worrying about that specific aspect, because in a war, the less things you have to worry about, the less things on your plate to fix and to move and people to move, the better it is for you. So if they can kind of, take that weight off their shoulders as far as worrying about Elon Musk and what he's going to do, and Russia has the same thing, and are they tapping in, and who's using it for what purposes, I'm all for it. I am all for it. So.
Gotcha. Well, for the record, by the way, there's HughesNet, Viasat, and now Kuiper that are coming online this year that are direct competitors to Starlink, which was the only business in town, largely because Elon Musk used his NASA connections to bully his way to the front of the line and get on the takeoff pads so that he could send his satellites up in all their test rockets and their low Earth orbit testing. And make use of that fact that they have kind of first opportunity at some of these takeoff sites that NASA has provided them with as part of their testing and working on things. It's just kind of like a perk of being there, whereas everybody else has to buy that space. SpaceX, kind of elbowed their way to the front, and they were hoping with Trump to make sure that would guarantee market, dominance for them in that regard. But this year, again, HughesNet and Viasat exist, but they're just not as big. But they're expanding this year, and Kuiper comes on like this summer. And will be available. And it's a very similar system, but it's linked into all the other Amazon ecosystem stuff. So think of all the people who use Google, all the people who use Alexa and all that kind of stuff in their homes. They're going to benefit from this. And I mean, that's your sales point. That's your, buying into your ecosystem the way people buy Apple products and stack them on other ones. They are LEOs. They are low Earth orbit, but they are a higher orbit than Musk's, and therefore will stay up longer. So Phil, one of the other questions I think had to do with how can we help Ukraine? What's the best way we can do that that you can think of? I mentioned calling Republican members of Congress and the Senate and the White House. Call and respectfully complain. Say this is they're in line with us. The Russians are not.
Well, and what else you could do over the weekend? I know. So this week's guest on the show on the Edge is a member of the Ukrainian diaspora who lives in L.A. Slavy Yarachenko, and there are rallies and protests and all sorts of gatherings that are being organized over the weekend as we run up to the third anniversary of the start of the full-scale invasion on Monday, the 24th. Look up your local area's American Ukrainian Association, or every major city have one. Certainly in Chicago, in LA, New York has got to have one. San Francisco, I'll bet, has one. But look up in your local area. It's kind of the Ukraine. Look up the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, for example. Find out where those protests are happening and attend them. It is time. It is past time that we really start getting vocal about this. So yes, call your representatives. I would say yes, obviously Republicans, but call your Democratic representatives as well. Just we need to activate, and we need to do it right now. Yep. So look up where your local Ukrainian American association is. Find out where that protest is going to be, because they're going to be happening all around the country, and attend them.
And I would argue avoid as much as you can. Always do parallel flags. If you're understand your audience when you're going to these things. So waving just a Ukrainian flag will make will just be fuel for the right wingers to ignore it. Wave it in conjunction with the U.S. flag as an allied flag. That's how you do it. You carry both. You attach them both to the same flagpole. Those kind of things. It's crucial to this. And you can see the blowback on the immigration protesters in Los Angeles who were walking around with the Mexican flag. It just became fuel for this idea that, see, it is an invasion. The right wing were able to parlay this in. We only got a couple of minutes left in the show, but I want to be abundantly clear. Both of these gentlemen, their shows are on Sunday, and you need to check them out. Brian for his coverage of U.S. politics and his love of all things Ukraine, as I cover here. And then, of course, Phil's on the Edge on Sundays. What's your guest tomorrow, Phil? What's the show there?
Again, 8 p.m. local time here in Kiev, 6 p.m. London. I think it's 10 a.m. Pacific, so 12 p.m. 10 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. We speak this week with Slavy Yarachenko, who is a member of the Ukrainian diaspora. She left when the bad old days of when everything was getting stolen. There was no future here, living under a Moscow puppet government before Maidan. But she walks us through the entire experience of being a Ukrainian ex-exile and watching these things fall.
Awesome. Well, I'm sorry. I apologize, everybody, that we have a bit of an audio issue with Phil's feed this week, but we will remedy it as best we can next time. And Brian, what are you covering?
My fault.
It's not your fault, Brian. What are you covering tomorrow? Do you think? Do you have a target, or it is a very target-rich environment?
Yeah, no, I have two target guests for tomorrow. I think it'd be good upon all of us to be focused upon the third anniversary of this horrendous invasion of Ukraine. I know we have a lot going on. I know there's multiple things we could talk about, but the two people I'd like to have on are the two people I'm talking to now. So if you guys have any time tomorrow, I know, Phil, you have your podcast at 12. My show is at 1. Hal, if you have any time, I'd love to continue this conversation with you guys and be able to, hear everybody.
We can,
I think it's really important because Hal, your knowledge and coverage of this subject, not Phil's obvious knowledge and coverage of this subject.
And we're out.
So
we're at the end of the show. Thanks so much, Boss Brian. Thank you, Phil. You're awesome. We will see you guys next week. Take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else.
Talk to you on Wednesday.
But Brian managed to get. Thank you, Chicago.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Brian. I think you managed to get the shit on the air.
Wait,
at
what?
The end. When you were like, shit, like that, at the end, no. I think you managed to get it out. I think you're okay. I think you're okay though. I think they
like, is there any ways? Is there like another way I could fuck this show up? Is there another possible way I could have fucked the last 45 minutes of this show up?
I don't know. Did you give Johnny COVID? I think that's the only way. Like, yeah. But anyways, you guys are awesome. But don't worry about it. And I will do my best. I've got a big honeydew list because Ethan, my girlfriend's son, got a house and he's moving into it, and so. Guess who's in charge of tech support and installing the ring and the ring system and the fans? What else do I have to do? And checking the baseboards and
well, good thing the first two is only about 5 wires total, so you should be okay there.
Yeah, right. That's right.
But no, if you have time, I would love it. If not, don't worry about it. I know it's a tough time and everybody's busy.
I will.
Same thing with Phil.
It.
If you could pass the word along to Phil, I know he can't hear me. If he's available, I'd love to continue the conversation. Like I said, sorry to hop in.
Not at all. Not at all. As I do. And we'll connect. All right, I'll let you guys go. All right, cheers, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Jumping through hoops today. Chat room. Thank you so much. And I will see you guys on Monday if I don't have time to join Brian tomorrow. One of these days, I'm gonna have a real studio. With actual hookup stuff. You didn't hear Brian say shit. He just went shit like that, and it was literally right as the music was queuing up. It was kind of spectacular. I don't think Chicago heard it either. I think it was buried under the fact that I was talking, so we're okay. It just sounded like sibilance. Yeah. One day I'm going to be a real boy. That's exactly right. Mark Thomas this week, a political analyst mentioned that Trump's moves in regard to Ukraine is interesting, given that he stated during the election that he didn't want war. So was he lying? Yeah, I just, again, the Gaza thing points that he's just talking out of his ass. He wants to bomb Mexico. The whole "I don't want war" thing is bullshit cover for trying to capitulate to Russia. I mean, we heard it from Tulsi, for fuck's sake. This is what they were talking about. Like, Tulsi Gabbard and all them were like, this is just, too many people are dying, and we just want peace, and there needs to be negotiations, and they're using they're weaponizing the language of the left to manipulate the electorate. They don't give a fuck that Russia invaded and murdered and raped their way across the country and is failing. They're just trying to protect their asset. They don't care. And again, it would be smart for Europe and Ukraine, even though I don't think it's as bad as people say internally in the White House and internally in these negotiations. I think it's a lot of blather and bravado. I think it's crucial that they have a backup plan. What is it? What did Q say to Bond? There's 2 things I've always tried to teach you, 007. 1, never let them see you bleed. And number 2, always have an escape plan. He went down on a platform, so I tried to recreate that for you because I love you in spite of yourself. Also, I want to thank, I didn't get a chance on the air, but I want to thank the trolls and maggots that showed up today. Really appreciate it. The fact that you write things tells the algorithm that not only are you paying attention, but I'm engaging, and you can't not. And that helps me out tremendously. So thank you. Thank you very much for being dough-headed and easy to manipulate and trigger. It does wonders for my reach in the algorithm. And I want to thank everybody in Congress and in the Senate on our side of the aisle and the other who watch my show on the regular. I know who you are. I see you. I hear people. Word gets back to me. I'm not going to call you out. Hello. You're right. I do have some of the best ideas out there. I think that's the direct quote. So hopefully today's breakdown of Doge in the first hour, gave you some ammo, for lack of a better phrase, some fuel. And I think it did. And if you didn't see it, go back and watch the first hour. I'm going to come up with I'm going to make a Substack about these points that I made on the show today and kind of tighten it up so that it's an easily digestible format. But hashtag, it's a heist. It's a heist. Doge is a heist. So anyways, much love to you guys. I will see you later. I have to go over to Ethan's house now and do some, it's going to be a busy couple of days. It's cool though. I'm excited about it. I love him and I'm very excited for him and him and his girlfriend. And it's just it's lovely. And they really did get in under the wire because it's going to be a rough run. Anyways, all right, hold on. Oh, I have to trigger my own music again. Sometimes I will forget, and I fixed it so that I have one less step in my stuff. There. Yeah. All right. I'll talk to you guys later. I'll probably see you tomorrow on Boston Brian Show if I can. Yeah? Yeah? Let's do this. Hey, Hal Vickery, thank you so much. Thanks, Candy. Thanks, Berkeley. Thanks, Sugar for Tea. Thanks, Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, 56 Nick Rich.